Alan Gunner Lindbloom. All right. So I found you on the internet. I think you might be friends with my homie too.
Are you
Uh,
recording just to make sure?
oh yeah.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I forget sometimes, so I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sometimes I forget to actually hit record, but yeah,
Right.
yeah, I hit it. Um, but you might be friends with my man Seth Ferranti.
Yeah.
Um, so your story is that you grew up in Detroit, as sort of I don't know, a child of the mob. Is that correct from your bio?
I mean it's a unique situation. By the way, Seth is that's my boy. He's directing a documentary that's being made on me. That's being released this summer. So that's pretty cool. So I grew up essentially in a mafia family, but it's kind of a unique scenario. My parents divorced when I was 4, and I was just a little kid. My dad was a drunken, abusive drunk. So I moved in with my grandparents, grandma and grandpa Toko in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, which is kind of a wealthy enclave. And my grandfather was cousins with the mob boss, right? Jack Toko, but all of his cousins and uncles and the people around him were either in the mob or associated with the mob. That was just our family. It wasn't anything cloak and dagger. And my grandfather wasn't in the mob. I mean, I think he did some things for various mafia figures, or maybe move money or conveyed orders or messages or whatever. I don't really know. I was told that he also was a layoff bookie when he was young. I don't know any of that, but all I know is I grew up around the mafia, and I didn't really know it. I mean, I knew my family was different because if I went to the store or something, for example, the corner store, there was this Greek guy named Gus who owned this corner store by our house. And I would go in there with my friends and I go to buy something, ice cream, candy, whatever. He wouldn't take my money. He would, but like, if it was like the mob kids, he didn't take our money. You know what I'm saying? He'd give it to us for free. So I noticed that. So it was different. So I kind of study. A little girl, when I was in first grade, didn't invite me to her birthday party. And I asked her why. And she said, my mom said you were in the mafia. I don't even know what the mafia is. So I asked my Uncle Pete, who's kind of like he's just a young hoodlum, probably about 17 at the time, tracksuit wearing, kind of, I don't want to say mob wannabe because he never wanted to be in the mob really, but he was around it. And he was a thug. He's a criminal and drug dealer. And then I asked him, what's the mafia? He says, don't worry, you'll see one day. You'll see it's our family. And so I started paying attention. And then I saw The Godfather when I was about 12. And it was very much like my family. But obviously it was glamorized. It was Hollywood. It was, but it was very much. There was a lot of similarities, and suddenly I was like 12 years old. I still remember the day. I was there with my cousin Jerry and Patrice, my uncle Joe Togo. It just everything kind of made sense after that. Oh, I get it now. I get it.
But let me ask you a question about Detroit. So, was it heavily African American back when you were growing up in Detroit? It was.
Listen, there was literally a borderline where one side of the border, Alter Road, was Grosse Pointe, rich people, right? All rich people. That's where all the upper echelons of the mob all lived in Grosse Pointe, basically in a several block radius of where I live. On the other side of Alter Road was the hood. And yeah, it was 99% black. Or back then it was probably about 80% black. But the only thing I remember is this. I never had any problem with the black kids except one time they tried to steal my bike and I caught them and like chased them off. I was little. And and another time I saw where they came through the neighborhood. My uncle said when they're riding double on their bikes, they're looking to steal a bike. Kids. And one day I see him going by riding double. And I'm just like, all right, my bike's in the backyard. I don't care. Well, 5 minutes later, I see these black kids getting chased down the block by a couple Italian guys. There's a lot of Italian, and they caught them stealing a bike. And they're like, we ain't calling the cops. They beat their ass. You know what I'm saying? They're probably 12, 13 years old. I slapped them up a little bit and said, yeah, we don't call the cops. Come back here and do this again. And so it was kind of in a regard segregated like that. But I didn't have really any interactions with like a black culture and community till I was older, which later on we get into that. I was very involved with the blacks, man. Like I had a bunch of black homeboys, and we all sold dope. I sold weed. You know, they sold coke and heroin. I'd sell them the coke and heroin. We'd hang out, go to the clubs. I used to firebomb dope houses that weren't theirs in the neighborhood. Like if there's a bunch of dope houses in the neighborhood competing with them, they give me $1,000 to firebomb the house. So it was almost like fun, like sport. Me and my cousin, I put 2 liter of kerosene with a M250 on there and run up and smash it through the window. Boom, blows up the house. Now that's one less house competing with my boy. You know what I'm saying?
So let me get this straight. You running with these black guys, and then you're throwing pipe bombs inside of people. Do you stand around and wait for them to come out? You just throw a
Oh,
bomb in there,
hell,
take
hell
off?
no. I didn't stand around wait for him to come out because if I did, my cousin would shoot him. So we just jump in the car and peel off. You know what I'm
So
saying?
this was like the warning shot to let them know
Yeah,
y'all can't move work over here anymore.
exactly.
Got you. And so
Yeah.
so your story, because I mean I've done a little bit of research on because you had a book. You wrote a book, right?
I wrote 10 books. Yeah.
You wrote 10 books.
Yeah.
I, I don't know why I'm not thinking of the title off the top of my
To
head
be a
right now.
king,
To
to
be
be
a
a king is
king.
one of them.
To be a
Yeah.
king. And to be a king, it tells your story, is that right?
No, no, it's a fiction novel. It's not my story. No,
Oh, okay. Okay. So all of these the 10 books that you wrote, they're all fiction novels.
they're all fiction novels. Yeah.
But okay, okay.
I did write a series of short stories called the Linbloom Chronicles, which is 24 short stories, about 250 pages of my life stories like I'm sharing with you now. I never published it.
Right.
I didn't publish it because I had published them online and they were getting like 40,000 views a day. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking, well, people want to read this. I might as well publish it and get paid for it rather than
Right.
you just put it out there. So
Right.
I took them all down. At one point, they had like, 30 million views or something. And I'm just like, you know what? And I just never, I got busy with everything else. I never published them, but I might someday. But my novels, yes, they're all fiction.
And so, because you're online, when you look at your footprint online, the way you're known is a Detroit or ex-Detroit mob enforcer, right? So you did work for you did some work for the mob.
Yeah. Did a lot.
Okay.
I mean, it just, yeah, I wouldn't. A lot of these websites and these shows, they're the one who labeled me the enforcer. Although an FBI agent did one time in a police report list me as enforcement for the Detroit Mafia. But yeah, I mean, it started when I was pretty young. Like I said, about 17 years old, I started selling weed for my Uncle Pete, which not tons of it, but like I don't know, 10 pounds every week or two broken down. And then I started selling steroids, which is a great racket. And the steroids I was getting from an Italian mob dude, right? And his name was Joe DiMaggio. And we all get busted. He gets indicted in this huge indictment, right? I'm not in it. I get the state busts me for just 2 hand-to-hand deliveries. Somebody set me up, but it was a big deal. There was 55 guys were arrested, like 5 different states, like 3 million doses of steroids, millions of dollars, guns, cocaine, everything, all that stuff. And I was able to dodge the federal indictment, although they had me on camera coming and going on the mic. They had me on the phone, but I was only 17 years old, and I was very blessed. They didn't try to burn me. But then 2 days after that bust, the local narcotics task force comes to my house and arrests me for 2 hand-to-hand deliveries, and I fight them for about 18 months. I'm going somewhere with this. For about 18 months, I fight it, and then I get sentenced to 6 months in the county jail. And but I don't in the work release program, but I only last like 2 weeks in the work release program, and I knocked some dude out eating chow, and they kicked me out of it, so I had to do my time in the jail, regular jail, in the tower. And so I get out. Now when I get out, I think I turned 20 in jail. This is about the time where things change. You're talking about working for the mob. Um, a couple weeks after I'm out of jail, I go to my cousin Nina's graduation party, and there was a guy named Tony Giacalone. And if you research him and Google him, there's a million things. He was the number one suspect in the Jimmy Hoffa disappearance. And I didn't, I remembered him as a kid, but then he didn't, like, I didn't see him for years. It turned out he was in prison. But then he came back around, and I was like 14, 15, 17, and whatever. I'd see him here and them. And my grandpa was real friendly with them. And I'm at this graduation party, and my grandpa asked him in Italian if he can get me some work. And my grandma was like, no, he don't need to work. Like, and I'm like, what? I need to work. She didn't want me to work that kind of work, but I didn't know the dude's like a huge mob boss. This guy's a big deal, man. This guy's he's the street boss of the Detroit Mafia and basically the face of the mob. Everybody knows him as the boss. You know, the real boss, you don't see him very often, but this dude's around and he controls all the sports betting, drugs. You connect that to like a guy named Frank Nitty Usher, was a black dude that he basically pruned him and put him in the game with heroin and made millions of dollars. And when he got busted, he paid $1 million to get him out on a recognizance bond or whatever to get him out. And long story, but yeah, Tony liked black, dealing with the black kids. And anyway, so he asked me to get me a job. And a couple weeks later, he comes over to my house and says, hey, you know that club Brownies on the Lake? I said, yeah, I know where it's a high end place, real high end club on the water, right? I've seen it. I've been around it. I passed it a million times, but it's like for high rollers. He says, listen, go in there and tell the owner, whose name is Al. That's what I was called back then, Al Alonso. This old man named Al said, ask for Al and tell him that I sent you to get a job working security here. And I said, okay. So I go in there. I asked for the guy, Al. They sent me to his office in the back, but I worded it like this. This is funny. I walked in. I said, Tony Jack sent me. Said you're going to give me the head security job. And he looks at me, this little skinny old dude. He says, Tony said that? I said, yeah, Tony said that you're going to give me the head security job. He looks like this. He's like, all right, well, here's a shirt, man. And he's like, you were going to work, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever. So I got the head security job working at this club, right? And I was only 20, so I wasn't even old enough to be in there. And it was High Roller Central. But one of the interesting things about that place was all the mob guys hung out there, and like all the generations of mob guys, not the old guys, but I'm saying guys that were in their 20s, there were guys that were in their 30s, there were guys that were in their 40s, and even a few guys in their 50s. They all had their little set. These guys sat there, those guys sat there. The place is huge, there's a big crowded club on the lake. And not really too much trouble very often. It's high end, it was like $15 for a top shelf drink. But what a great gig it was for me because there's all these hot women in there, and I'm only 20, and I just macking girls all day, every day. And but I'm networking with all these mob guys who they know I'm a Toco, and they know that I'm friends with Tony Jack because Tony Jack came in there and be talking to me, and then I come over, oh, what's up with you and Tony Jack? He likes you. I'm like, yeah, he's my uncle through marriage. He's an uncle. My mom's cousin married his daughter, and so, anyways, all these guys started like, here's the thing, bro, like. They knew I was an authentic tough guy, and there just wasn't many of those left. They this wasn't not in the mob, not around. Most of them were soft. They were cake. I mean, they didn't carry a gun. They didn't go beat and rob. They didn't do nothing gangster. They basically ran sports books and like white collar rackets and things like that. I was well known as just this guy who's always knocking guys out. I carried a gun. I've pulled the gun on guys in the club. I pulled knives on people. I've been in all these fights. They knew I was doing criminal, gangster stuff all the time. For example, one of Tony Jack's calls me one day. This is around the same time. I can't remember if it's before or after I started at the club. And he says, it's like 7 a.m. He calls my house, and my grandma yells in the basement. She's like, Alonzo, Tony's on the phone. I'm like, Tony who? I got like 5 Tonys in my family. She's like, Tony Jack, which when she said she don't like Tony because he was a gangster. And so I pick up the phone 7 a.m. I'm like, what's up, Tony? What do you need? He's like, I need a favor. I'm like, what's up? He said, can you do me a favor? I said, yeah, I got you. What is it? He says, listen, this guy showed up. I have this girlfriend of mine. And I don't know if he meant girlfriend or friend of mine because he was married. Her ex showed up at her house last night and slapped her around. He's still there, passed out. Can you handle it? And I said, yeah, I can handle that. He said, you sure you can handle this? Like he's trying to tell me to do what I said, bro, I got this. So here's the address. It's only not even 3 miles from my house. So he gives me the address. I call my workout partner, this big Italian kid named Dario. I said, come on with me. Funny, this is how the type of gangsters I hung around. When I tell him, hey, listen, get over here fast. We got some work. First thing out of his mouth, he's like, do I need my piece? I'm like, nah, leave it. Bring a pool stick or something. So he did. And anyways, we fly over to this house. I knock on the door. The chick opens the door. It's kind of quiet. And I said, where is he? She's like, he's in the back. I said, Tony sent me. Where is he? He's like, in the back, passed out. I said, get the kids out of here because there was like two little boys. And I said, put them up, man. They don't need to see this. So I think it was their father. And so I went in the bedroom and said, like, I was trying to be cool at first. I was like, I banged my hand on the headboard, boom, boom, boom. He looks up. I says, time to go, bro. You got to go. He goes, who the F are you? And my exact words were, I'm the boogeyman, mother effer. And he laughed. He was kind of a big muscle bound tan dude, which made me think that he worked in construction or roofing or something. He was older than me. He was probably early 30s. You know, I'm only 20. He says, get the frick out of here, kid. That's what he says, man. Get the frick out of here, kid. I said, kid. And I reached down, I grabbed him by the hair with one hand, and I start yanking him out, thinking he ain't gonna try to fight or nothing. He did. He started trying to fight me. He started swinging on me. You know what I'm saying? So I just mollywop him, bro. I had this big nugget ring, this big huge nugget ring, and I just smash him, right? So he's bloody mess, splattered all over the place. I drag him out of the house, down the stairs. I throw him out, boom, whatever. I get rid of him. So then, obviously she calls Tony and tells him what I did. And after that, Tony was like, there's a kid who's not afraid to get his hands dirty. You know what I'm saying? And he's an intimidating kid. Even back then I was pretty big. I was big. I was like 200 pounds ripped up. Maybe a little bigger but ripped up. I did some bodybuilding shows, so I was like real muscular. So, anyways, so every once in a while he'd he'd reach out and say I need a favor to do.
Well, let's get back to that in a second. I want to ask you another question. Did you rob people while posing as a DEA agent? I read that
I
somewhere.
did. I did. Yeah, in the
So you,
hood.
so you went and got the outfit from where?
Yeah, yeah. From a friend who was he worked for the DEA, but he no longer worked for the DEA. Yeah, he was a gang squad cop in the city in the hood, and so he said he had that stuff. I said, man, I'll buy it from you. He said you could have it. So I had the badge and a jacket, and two of them. So me and my cousin would run up in houses and just guess who's here, and guns blazing. So although uh, one crazy time was I got him on the ground, and my cousin's zip tying, and I'm like, dude, I said, there's nobody else in this house, don't be a hero when I want to have to kill you, because if they come down them stairs, I said, like, you'll be the first to go if somebody shows up. Nah, man, nobody's in here. All of a sudden, some dude comes down the stairs and opens fire on us, man. It was like the scene from Pulp Fiction, bro. Bang, 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 bang. Like, he had me dead to right. I'm like, I froze up. I said, I'm dead. He don't hit me, but so I'm raised my gun, boom, 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 boom. He's running up the stairs. I'm shooting to the wall. And that was one of those times. And another remarkable time is I did it with another guy, and he ended up shooting the guy in the leg. And I'm just like, why would you do that? Like, you know what I'm saying? He's like, I was trying to, motivate him to give us all the dope. I'm like, bro, you know what I'm saying? We got the sack, we got the money, you don't got to shoot nobody. But yeah, that's the type of lunatic I was.
Did you? So I saw somewhere that the actor Armand Asante was going to play you in a movie. Is that still going on?
A TV series. I can't talk about that, but I will say this is because it's just kind of a thing I can't talk about. But that script is written, and but no, he's narrating in part the documentary that's being made on me. If I could show you the sizzle, maybe I'll send it so you can play it here, a
Yeah.
piece of it. But he's in it. You see him in it, it's chilling. I spent 6 days at his house, and really got to know him, and he really got to know me, and I sit there and tell him about my books, a couple of my books, two, three of my books, and he was just in awe. He was in awe. He said, Gunner, I've been in this business for 50 years, man. I've known some of the greatest writers in the business. He's like, you're in the top three I've ever met. Just sheer storytelling. My books are just so much bigger than my life. But he was, intrigued by my life too, and he's like, man, you've lived a remarkable life. He's the one that said I should have a documentary that'll help promote my books and this TV series. So that's what we're doing. But my books are so much bigger than me. You know what I'm saying?
So
In
you
my
didn't,
opinion.
when you was out there in the streets, you didn't have necessarily a crew. Like you would hook up with, this guy, that guy, and do some jobs, but you didn't have an official crew. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say I had an official crew, but I mean, I had a crew. I had a crew of guys um, that were all drug dealers that were all my boys, and most of them weren't gangsters. Most of them didn't do gangster stuff. Most of them didn't do the robbing and the crazy robbing pimps and crazy stuff that I would do. But that we all sold drugs together. Don't get me wrong. I had a couple of gangsters, like a couple of cousins, for example, who were They were gangsters. Yeah, they were straight lunatics, sociopaths, really, and they were trigger happy sociopaths.
Did you
Yeah,
do? Did you do any? Did you just do jail time or prison time as well?
man, I did 13 years.
You did 13 years.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
who was? How did you get bread when you was in there? And like, who was on the outside that was holding you down? Who's putting money on your books? Anybody, or you had some hustles when you was inside?
Listen, if we're gonna get into that story, I'm gonna tell you the full story about my wife, which is the best part of my story. But
If you keep it short enough for me to edit.
yeah, I mean, it can't
Yeah.
be that. I gotta keep it real with you, bro. So
Yep.
listen, before I got locked up, I robbed a drug dealer. His name was Joe, of 10 pounds of weed or 8 pounds, whatever. Big muscle bound, steroided out dude, but he couldn't do nothing. He couldn't whoop me, and he wasn't gonna try to kill me. So I just took the weed, like he fronted it to me, and I didn't pay him, you know. And so fast forward 8 years later, I'm in prison. And well, when I was in solitary confinement, I spent 19 months in the hole while I was fighting my case. I basically did the whole time in the hole. Out of 23 months, I did 19 of them in the hole, and and that's when I felt God speak to my heart, and he just said, "Listen, I was going to kill myself, man. They were trying to give me 30 years. I'm like, man, I ain't doing 30 years. I just kill my. I've been shot, stabbed, hit with bats. I wasn't afraid to die. So." I just said, I'm going to check out, man, get the razor during shaving time and go in the shower and slit my wrist. And God said, no. He said, don't do that. I got you. I'll protect you. I'll get you through this. You can do this. And I gave you a gift. What is the gift? I'm like, what gift? And I'm thinking I'm losing my mind. By the way, I just got jumped by the officers. They all jumped me and beat my ass. I'm bleeding. I'm out of breath. And he said, you know what it is. And I looked at these books, and there was a letter my grandmother wrote me. She said, you write the most beautiful letters. You could be a writer. And I knew it. I knew writing was my gift. So what I did was started writing novels in my head. And then when I got to prison proper, when I finally got out of the hole, um, I just get to prison. I'm getting ready to, I want to write. I want to write. And I get a letter from this guy, Joe, who I robbed. And he says, listen, man, I'm driving down the street thinking about you, man. I saw in the paper you got all this time in prison. And I felt really bad for you. But the next day I'm on my way to work. And basically he said the Holy Spirit came over him and I began to cry. And he said, God was telling me to look out for you. I don't know why, but is there anything I can do for you? I said, yeah, man, if you can buy me some papers and pens, I want to start writing books. So he sent me $30. I bought papers and pens. It took me a year to write my first novel. He read it, he was blown away, and basically this cycle repeats 6 times over the next 6 years. I send him 6 novels, and this is 2009. And right when Facebook came out, he says, "Man, I'm gonna start a Facebook page for you, and I'm gonna post some sample chapters on of your book on Facebook." And I said, "Okay, I don't even know what Facebook is. You know, I'm a max security prison." And so he posted sample chapters in some. This is the most amazing part of my story. Some random girl who actually is from my neighborhood, believe it or not, but I never knew her, um, who worked for a publisher in New York. She worked for a New York publisher, and she was a new Christian too. So she saw on my Facebook profile that I'm a Christian and that I'm writing books. And she worked for a New York publisher, so she reached out. She read the samples, said these are really good. I'd like to read the full manuscript. I said cool. I had a friend turn it into a PDF and send it to her. She read the 1,100 pages, with both volumes of the book. She read them both in 3 days and then wrote me a letter and said, "This is the best book I've ever read. You're a unicorn." And I was like, "Yay!" So she's, "I'm gonna help you get published." So I'm like, "What? Yay!" So I'm thinking I just hit the jackpot, right? And this chick who works for a publisher is gonna help me get published. I mean, come on, man. And so we started writing letters back and forth, and over the next year we fell in love. Her and I fell in love through hundreds and pages of letters, and we committed to get married when I get out before I ever spoke a word. Then she came and visited me, and for the next 7 years, she waited. She waited like a champ, man. She moved way up north where I want to live in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness because she loves the outdoors too. And she waited, and so I got out that day and I married her. So talking about who supported me in prison in the beginning, I didn't get much support from anyone. I had a girlfriend when I got locked up. I had been with her for 13 years, and she'd send me like $30 a month, 20, 30. It's all she could afford. She was poor. As a waitress, she worked as a manager at a restaurant, Ponderosa, and she sent me for years. She sent me money, and then suddenly the money seemed a little sporadic, and she wasn't answering my calls as much. I'm like, oh, she got a man. You know what I'm saying? She got a man. So I Dear John her and just like, yo, go on with your life. Forget me. And she cried, said, you don't want to be friends? I'm like, no, no. So there was a period where I didn't have any support except the guy, Joe. Joe would send me 20, $30 here and there. And then my friend Bill, who saw the Facebook profile, he was my dog in high school, bro. This guy was a legend. He was a G, bro. He started writing me, sending me money, and he'd be like, you need anything, Here's money. And then I had another friend named Eli who was a drug dealer, and he'd send me like $300 here, $300 there, and so I was pretty well off. But then when I met my wife, she my books are loaded all the time. Like I maxed out commissary for the last 7 years every week.
So I was on your website. Your website talks about you said that you want to be the best steward for God and humanity that you can be. Like, what does that look like for you?
That's a good question, man. Thank you for asking that. Asking that. Really, I know that my entire journey in my story is the purpose for it is to showcase that God can change anybody, and God can forgive anyone. Anyone can receive grace and mercy, and no matter how bad you are, like acting wise, or how bad you are off as a drug addict or a gangster or whatever it is, you're not beyond redemption. And so my point and my purpose of all of this, especially the documentary, is simply to say, look at man, listen, if God can change the cold heart of a guy like me in the streets, bro, all I was doing is fighting and knocking fools out and, robbing and crazy stuff, robbing banks, robbing pimps, robbing everybody. And I just didn't care. And all of a sudden, suddenly changed it all, man. Like now I do care and I wanted to be good, bro. I always wanted to be the good guy. I don't know about you, but like being a bad guy ain't cool. And even when I was a bad guy, I knew it wasn't cool. It wasn't. It was miserable. It was a miserable. I hated it. I said, when I decided to lean into God, I said, I'm going to be a good guy from now on. I want to be a nice guy, a kind guy, a caring guy, a servant. I'm just going to be good, man. I'm do what God wants us to do. And so that's what I mean by, being the best steward I can for God.
So on your Instagram, you have sort of a tribute to Vanilla Ice, and I think the one song that everybody knows about Vanilla Ice. You still rock out to that to this day?
Bro, listen, if it comes on Pandora, and it does every once in a while when I'm working out, hell yeah, I'm bumping. My head's bouncing. Like ice, ice, baby. I can't help it, man. It was a classic, and it came out when I was in like a senior in high school. I never graduated. I got expelled from high school. Or I got expelled from school when I was in ninth. Well, actually, eighth grade. I never made it past eighth grade. And but anyways, I hung around all my friends who went to high school, but I didn't. And I was just a drug dealer and a thug. But yeah, that came out, and it just reminds me of like spring break. 1991 spring break and stuff. Yeah.
You said you got expelled. Is that why you climbed to the top of the school, sat on top of the school?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's
Well,
exactly what I did. That was the school that expelled me. So I climbed up there. That's in the documentary, and like was like, "What's up, Lakeshore? I'm a king of the class now."
that's that. So you just wanted to send them a message like "fuck you"? Is that what you was doing?
Basically, now I just maybe not f you, but maybe like, hey, listen, it's more like this. You overlooked me. You know what I'm saying? And so here I am now. Now, as a writer, as a novelist, see, I own a publishing company, and I help people write great books as an editor, a developmental editor, and I'm a ghostwriter. Like I get paid a lot of money to write books for other people, and I do what 99.9.9 on and on point of the population can't do. It's the gift God gave me. I'm not good at much else, really. I'm not. But this one thing I'm very good at. I'm the best at it. And anyone who's read my books will tell you. Anyone who's read my books will tell you, man, this dude's the truth on that tip, on that writing tip. And so, like teachers and things like that, they thought I was just a worthless thug life. And it turns out, what I'm saying, I had a
So
talent.
yeah, and so this is the part where let's say we get into like the sticky situation. I'm a journalist. I got to ask you the tough questions. So some people online have said, I wish I had the guy's name, the guy from Mob Chronicles,
Mm,
and a guy named Bernstein. He's a
yeah.
friend. Bernstein's a friend of yours, by the way.
He used to be till he got cowarded out.
And
I want
what's his first name?
Scott.
Scott Burnstein. That's right. So because I know I saw an interview with him, and he describes y'all as being friends. You're saying, well, it might be on shaky ground now. But so this goes back to your relationship to the Toko family, right?
Mm,
You said Pete Toko. So Pete Toko's your grandfather. Is that correct?
yeah, and my uncle. There's his
It's
Peter
two
Paul
of them.
Toko. Peter Paul Toko Sr. was my grandfather. Peter Paul Toko Jr. was my uncle.
Okay. And so he's saying, Bernstein is saying that, nah, Gunner's not related to that Toko family and everything that that he's saying is false. That's
Well,
what.
I mean, he could say whatever he wants, and the fact is the fact. I mean, it was. See, that's a bold-faced lie, and he knows it. I was friends with this guy for 5 years, bro. We had. I posted my phone records. This guy called me 156 times over 12 months to 30 hours of talk time. I told him my whole story and my family, whatever. But people got confused that thought that I was referring to a different Peter Toko, which I wasn't. But the truth is, they're all cousins. They're all, whether second or third cousin, they're all family. They all came from Terracini, Sicily, right? And they all moved to Detroit in the same neighborhood for a reason. It wasn't an accident that all these Tokos moved from Terracini, Sicily to one little neighborhood in Detroit. So they're all very close. I'd see them at church all the time. And I have all of these men, older men, they were introduced to me as my uncles, but when in fact they were just cousins. They're older, so you call them uncle. And he knew that. He knew that I was introduced to all these people from a young age as uncles. And I call them uncles because, when you're young, you don't know the freaking difference. We had a huge Italian family, big weddings and big graduation parties and, funerals or at church every week. Everybody's there. You're all cousins and uncles. And I never did know who was who. I just knew that my mom said, this is your Uncle Tony, or this is your Uncle Joe, or this is your uncle. That's it. Well, maybe they were second cousins or even third cousins, but not first cousins. I don't know. I didn't care.
And we talk about the Toko family, that's the mob family, also known as the Detroit Partnership.
Yeah,
Like
it's all one family.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
and there's just the thing is there's different strains of it. My wife did a genealogy and posted it for these haters and said, "Here's his genealogy. You could see exactly where the bloodlines split, where they all go, and I was cousins to all of them, and I grew up in Ground Zero. Where I grew up was exactly where the hierarchy, the mafia Toko bosses, where they lived. They lived like 3 blocks from me." And so they're the same age. My uncle and the boss is basically the same age. I think my grandfather was a little bit older. They grew up calling each other cousin. They grew up going to each other's functions. They grew up going to school. Their kids went to the same schools. This is all one family. So haters hate because they got nothing better to do. It's goofy.
So your contention that Scott Burnstein is just hating on you.
No, I'll tell you what happened to Scott Burnstein. So this is the coward stuff. Like, dude, I had this guy's back. Like I said, I have hundreds and hundreds of calls. Been out to dinner with him 12 times. Hung out, did Fox News with him, did shows with him. He was on my channel 19 times appearances. Then he claims he doesn't know me, barely knows me. Why? Because some troll pretending to be somebody from the mob, calls him or sends him a message saying the family doesn't appreciate you backing up Gunner. He's a fraud. He's lying about this, that, and he thinks it's real. So he goes on some stupid little YouTube show, like goofy ass show, 5,000 subs and just a bunch of dork mob groupies. And he says, "Yeah, well, Gunner, I don't know his family. I can't say for sure that his family is this, but he's not related to that. I don't think he's related to that. I don't know who his grandfather, but the people." Here's what he said: "All I've ever heard about his grandfather is he's a good guy. That's all." I'm like, he's like, "I never heard of his Uncle Pete." Dude, this guy don't know dick. I'm telling you. I asked him, "Who do you know who was active my age now and then?" Not one person he knows. I named 10.
So this is the Toko family partnership, Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Is what we talk about.
Yeah.
And so I saw you said that there was underground tunnels.
Yeah. That's a whole nother issue. These trolls.
So they used to smuggle
Bootleg.
alcohol during
Yeah, no, that's what I was
Prohibition.
told.
So for people out there that don't know what Prohibition is when it was a time in America it was illegal to sell alcohol. That's Prohibition. So and you're saying that there was tunnels underneath your grandparents' house in Grosse Pointe where they smuggled.
Yeah. Well, so here's where more haters. Like, I got this one hater who's a troll who I beat him up when I was like 19 years old. I beat him up. And now he's made it his life's mission to try and discredit me early. I don't care. It's a joke. He's mentally ill. I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
But anyways, I told a story about how there were tunnels in my house growing up. And they like Google the house and they like, well, this house was built, and I told them why, because I asked my mother and my uncles like, why is the tunnel there? And they said, smuggling booze during Prohibition, and so they look up the date the house was made, and it's 1953, right? By the way, that house was a gift, beautiful house. It was given to my grandparents for their wedding gift by my great grandfather, Pietro Lito, and he was definitely involved in bootlegging and money. He came to Detroit, poor, broke immigrant, and like 10 years later, is a multimillionaire, construction guy. But anyways, here's the story behind the house. Why I said there's tunnels in it. When I was young, I was going downstairs, and my uncle said the shelving unit pulled away in the cellar, and sure enough, there's a door back there. It's dark, it's door, and little kid, I'm like 5, 6, 7 years old. I go, "What's that? What is that?" And they grab me and try to throw me in there. Like, go look, go see what's in there. And I'm thinking, boogeyman, man, I ain't going in there. Hell no. I ripped away and ran out of there. And so I forgot about it, but I'd always like see the shelving unit and go behind that as a wall, as a tunnel or something. And I asked my mom later when I was 13, 14 years old, like, why was that tunnel there? And she says, Prohibition. They used it on Prohibition. And at the time, I didn't even know what Prohibition was. So the fact is, there was a house there before that had the tunnel during Prohibition that went to the canal at Alter Road. Was like a block over, 2 blocks over. And apparently they used it for smuggling booze, whatever. Then my great grandfather bought the house that was there, that was built in like 1880, and tore it down and put up the new house that he gave my grandparents. He was a builder. You know what I'm saying? So that's what he did. He built houses, and then he gave them the house for free. But anyways, the tunnel was from the house prior to that. It just happened to still be there, but they didn't put it in the blueprint. They didn't say anything. It was just there. And there are other houses in the area that had tunnels for that reason too, and that's well known.
But
But
see, here's I think where the problem might be is that because I think I saw you say this in an interview that they smuggled alcohol during Prohibition.
mhm.
So you made that assertion. Like so when I saw you in the interview, you didn't say, well, somebody told me it's Prohibition. You put forward that that's what the
Yeah.
tunnel was for. It was for
Well,
Prohibition.
that's what I was told. That's
Right.
it. Yeah.
Okay. But
Yeah.
okay, because Prohibition ended in 1933, right?
Right. But the
And
house
so
that was there previously was built in like 1880.
right.
And and,
But your
and then my
grandparents'
grand
house wasn't built till 1953, right?
my great grandfather tore that house down, put a new house up, and gave it to my grandparents. So when I asked why the tunnel was there, I was told it was for Prohibition. No, I didn't pay much close attention to that because I didn't care. I mean, I didn't know what it was and didn't really care.
So let me tick off a couple of these because I know these are things that Scott Burnstein has been saying about you, and so I mean I guess this is the best way to set the record straight. So your grandparents moved to Grosse Pointe in 1986. Is that right?
No, hell no. They were my
No,
great
they moved from Grosse Pointe to St. Clair Shore in
that
'86. My bad.
no, not 80. Yeah, I was 14 at the time, so it'd be 87.
And so you went to jail for 6 months. And you was in your 20s.
Yeah. And when I
Okay.
got out, I went and lived with them. Okay, I know where you're going with this. I said in a interview that when I got out of jail, I went and lived with my grandparents in
This
Grosse
is
Pointe.
1993.
Yeah. So I lived with my grandparents again in Grosse Pointe. That was just a mistake that I just because I was so used to seeing Grosse Pointe living in. It's very close, by the way. Their house was only 1 block away from Grosse Pointe.
Right.
So and they grew up in Grosse Pointe, and I said I got out and lived with my grandparents again in Grosse Pointe. I should have said St. Clair Shores, but for the sake of like continuity, I just instinctively said Grosse Pointe, but it wasn't in St. Clair Shores. It was the same thing. It only was like 4 miles from where we lived before.
Now you can imagine the position I'm in because I mean I do have a broad audience. I interview R&B pop stars.
Yeah,
I interview rappers. I interview all kind of people. But a large base of this audience. Or somewhat large base of this audience is like guys in the streets, guys in hip hop and stuff like. So they're gonna be like, "Yo, Powers, you got to make sure you get your facts straight on this." You
get
know
it
what I
right,
mean?
man. Ask me anything you want, bro. I got nothing to hide. This is like I said. So in an interview, I said, yeah, when I got out of jail, I went and lived with my grandparents back in Grosse Pointe. That was just me, you know, instinct. I didn't even think about it because it was so close to Grosse Pointe. It was a block away. Why would I change it to St. Clair Shores? I mean, I should have, but I just didn't think about it.
Okay, so you say that Tony Giacalone called you to handle this thing where his son got punched. You remember that?
Wasn't his son, yeah, but no, it was his sister's son.
Because this goes into the narrative of you being a tough guy and an enforcer and connected with the mob. They call you on the phone. They want you to go handle this thing. And you said it was Tony's sisters who called you to do
Yeah,
this?
it was. I was introduced to her as an aunt, and but I've told the story a couple times, and I may have changed the names to protect my cousins. I think I did that, and I did like alter the timeline. Like I said, he called me, but he really didn't. He called my grandmother. My grandmother called me, and then I called the aunt back. And anyways, and long story short is the cousin who I didn't really know well at all, but he was a nice kid. He was, I don't know, a couple years younger than me, good looking kid. My grandmother says, call Tony. I call Tony. He's at the aunt's house. He says, listen, they beat up Tony and broke his nose. Can you come handle this? So I jump on my ninja and I shoot over there. I'm like, where are the kids? They're like in that backyard in the corner. And I stomp up in the backyard. There's about 6 dudes playing basketball. And I said, which one of you mother effers put your hands on my cousin? Now, they all stop, and a couple of them are pretty big. They all stop and look at me, and one of them says, what's up, Al? Tony's your cousin? And I say, which is not his real name, by the way, Tony. I'm just protecting him, but we'll call him Tony. He says, what's up? Tony's your cousin? Because I don't want him confused with my real cousin, Tony, either. It's not, I'm not talking about him. Like my first cousin, Tony. And so he said, what's up? Tony's your cousin? I said, yeah, mother effer. But he knew my name. Now they lived in Grosse Pointe at the time. I was living in St. Clair Shores with my dad. You know what I'm saying? And there's 3 parts of Grosse Pointe, and they were in the part that's pretty far from me. Like there's Grosse Pointe Shores, Grosse Pointe Park, and then Grosse Pointe. They were like in Grosse Pointe, so I was like 3 cities away from them. And this dude said, "What's up, Al?" As soon as he said my name, like, "What's up, Al?" I'm like, "Okay." So they know who I am, which is good because if they know who I am, they know how I'm cut. And they said, "Oh, Tony's your cousin." I said, "Yeah, mother effer." He's like, and I said, "You know me?" And they're like, "Yeah, we know you're Gino's boy." Da 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 da. And everybody knew Gino, my boy Gino. I said, "You don't know me, bro." I said, "If you knew me, you wouldn't put your hands on my cousin." And they're like, "No, I wasn't even like that. We're playing basketball. Things got a little heated. He got elbowed. The punch was strong. We broke it up. We're cool with Tony. We like Tony. That's our boy." Da, 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 da. And they talked their way out of it. And I said, "Okay, good. If anyone ever touches him again, I'll come back and smash every one of you bitches." That's what I said. I'll be back here and I'll smash every one of you bitches. I had a wife beater on. And no, I was a big stocky kid. And then I went back and told Tony it ain't gonna bother him no more. And then and the aunt and the cousin Tony told Tony what I did, and so Tony's like, hey, I figured that's what he was going to do, punk these kids out, and that's what I did.
So I think some people might see some inconsistencies in that just because. So Tony's sisters would have been 80 at the time, is what I'm being told, right? And so
No,
the
it
kid
was
would have been in his 30s.
no, there was it was she was like my mother's age, so I don't know if it was his sister or his niece. I don't know. It's just I call her aunt.
But the kid would have been in his 30s, right?
No, the kid was my age. This is back in no, the kid was my. It would be the kid. The aunt was like my mother's age, and the kid was 2 years younger than me.
Okay. So because I've seen different interviews. I've seen a few. I mean, you've been on some high profile platforms. And then so you said you at one point you said your aunt beeped you on this.
No, my grandmother beat me, and then I
Okay.
called. She said, "Here's the aunt. Call her," and I did. So
Okay.
I'm telling a story on the fly. I'm just like, what's these stupid details? I don't
We
even
talk,
care.
hey, but listen, Gunner, we talk about my business. We gotta
Yeah, I don't
be.
care. I'm just if I'm gonna tell a story, and trying to protect the identity of my cousins and aunt. I'm just like, yeah, yeah. So I to make it move faster, I just said, Tony called me and I went over there. Then I might have said it, told it again, said, my grandmother beat me. I called her back. She told me to call my aunt. I'm not going through all that. I just, what I'm saying.
And so you collected $1.7 million for Black Bill Toko.
No, Jack Toko.
Okay, for Jack Toko, and you did the mission with Johnny Fats.
Yeah.
I love these names, by the way. But yeah, so you and Johnny Fats did this mission to get 1.7 million. Is that correct?
Well, that's what it turned out to be. It wasn't like here, go collect 1.7. I didn't know at the time, but Tony, this is a crazy story, very crazy. Tony said, "Listen, I want you and Johnny to go visit the bookies and the loan sharks. Get all the money you can." He says, "Get whatever they can. Give them amnesty. If they owe 15 grand, take 10. call it even. I don't know why, but they were desperate to get the money off the street. Now, I asked my Uncle Pete, I think, and they're like, oh, I think Uncle Jack has got some investment that he's trying to invest in out east. I don't, they're not going to tell me dick. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just running around to bookies and loan sharks and collecting this money. But they had teamed me up with Johnny Fats, and I didn't like the kid. He was violent. He was a killer. He was unpredictable. I didn't really like him. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to be around him. But now we're stuck in this apartment counting money together, which was scary as hell. And so after 3 days, I pretty much did the rounds. We got all of it. We counted it, and Tony said, "Meet me at the track, the Hazel Park track." I think by now they had sold the Hazel Park track or put it in like the LLC or something, but they still had an office there. So I went down, I brought it in. It was very cryptic and weird because I think that was not a place where I should have been, because like it was like a mob hangout, right? It was the racetrack, Hazel Park racetrack. And I figured the place is always under surveillance. Maybe it wasn't, but in my mind, I thought it was under surveillance. So I'm like, man, I'm bringing this freaking big duffel bag of money into this track. So I go in there, and Tony brings me down like this hallway. There's little stairs. You go down, and he says, sit down. So I sit down. He gets on the phone, and he calls someone. He calls somebody. He says, just sit here and wait. I'm nervous as hell, man. I got all this money here, but I feel safe because of Tony,
At this time, you had 1.7 mil on you?
in a bag, yeah, in a big fat like hockey bag. Yeah, we had to exchange a lot of the bills to get bigger bills at banks. He told me what banks to go to do it, so they wouldn't report it and stuff. Tony was connected, and so we get it in there, man. It's not as big as you think when it's in hundreds, 50s, but we had to like swap out all the 20s and 10s and all that to get it small. So anyway, long story short is Jack Toko comes walking in, and Tony like nods, and I just go like this, and and then he goes, beat it. and I
Wait,
get up.
what was your cut?
I think I had 30 grand. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. 30 grand out of 1.7 mil. Okay.
he didn't pay me for a while, but I kept bugging him. But here's what happened. The reason why they were doing that is because they got word that the RICO indictment was coming. So this would have been in 1996. And this was kind of the end of it for me with the mob. They knew that an indictment was coming, RICO, and they were going to be hitting all these freaking top level mob guys. So they were trying to get the money off the street. And I'm sure I wasn't the only guy out collecting, you know what I'm saying? Or me and, Johnny Fats. There were, who knows? I mean, he might have had 10 guys out connecting. I don't know. All I know is what I did. But so they collected several $1 million off the street, and then the RICO came down, I don't know, like 3 weeks later. If that, I don't know, it might have been before that, and boom. So at least they got all that cash off the street.
So like the other part of this, the 1.7 million with you and the Johnny Fats thing is, I think in another interview you said Frankie did it. Who was Frankie?
I said Frankie, I said Johnny. Neither one are his real name. I just changed the
But
name.
Johnny Fats is a real guy.
No, I know, no, it's not a real guy.
Johnny Fats ain't a real guy?
No, it's not his real name.
Okay.
No, Fats is his name. Yeah, they call him Fats, but his real name is not Johnny or Frankie. I've changed it. You got to protect people, man.
Okay. All right.
You can't just say their freaking name.
Okay. Yeah, that I get, which that's going to bring me to another question later on. So Scott Burnstein says your grandfather's not a made guy.
I never said he was, not once, ever.
You never said in the interview that
Hell no.
you was the grandson of the head of the
Never.
Toko
Never
mob family?
Never said that. Never said that. But I would never say that.
Because it seems to me that Scott Bernstein is wasting, and I watched a lot of your interviews. And we talk about Grosse Pointe, and Grosse Pointe is where the Toko mob family live. You make a lot of connection between yourself.
That's where I lived, in Grosse Pointe, where all the mob lived, all within like a 5-block radius. All of us.
Okay.
My whole life.
First of all, it's a bunch of Tokos, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of Tokos. There is. Yeah.
And most of the Tokos ain't related to the mob family.
They're all related to the mob family. They're just not involved in the mob, but they're all related. Listen, bro, they didn't just accidentally end up in the same neighborhood from a little town in Sicily. They all went there for the same reason, because family was there, friends were there, to support each other. They all got there for the same reason at the same time. So, but not everybody was mob involved. Only a small percentage were involved with the mob. But they all knew each other. They all hung out. They all, with the family functions, they all respected each other, and they loved each other. They were family, but only some were in the mob.
Because you're selling, you got merch now, right? What's your merch?
Oh, Art Thing Apparel.
Art Thing Apparel. So
Mhm.
what is that like look like a fedora for the logo?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And so it's Art Thing Apparel. That's making reference to La Cosa Nostra,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, it's just as much though for people who just want to take pride in where they come from. Most of our gear has like your city and our thing on the back. So like so it's basically, if you know what our thing is, quote, and you get it. But if you're from Detroit and you see somebody wearing a shirt that's a Detroit our thing, that's more what it is because the
So,
whole
but
mob.
so like I'm playing devil's advocate. If I'm, let's say, a made guy, and I've been around, let's say, 30 years, right? I put in the work, I took the blood oath, omerta, that
Mhm.
type of thing, right? And now I see Gunner
Yeah.
outside. He's on video. He's doing a lot of talking about the Toko family, and it's like you making your bones on this connection to the mob. Now you got the merch, is our
Li-
thing kind of thing. It's
Listen,
like,
so let me explain. First of all, I don't care. And anyone who doesn't, anyone who's got a problem with it can eat a dick.
yeah, let's go. Let's go. Let's do that part.
Yeah. So also my book's about a fictional Detroit mafia family. My novels, and I've been at the Italian festival. I did it 2 years in a row. Right now, then this is a huge event. 100,000 people over 2 days, 2.5 days. The entire all the families, because it's not just Toko who's the crime family. There's a bunch of mob families. They all will go there to eat and hang out and be seen and stuff. They all came to my booth, bought my books, bought my merch, gave me a hug, said, "Welcome home. We're proud of you. Good to see you, Gunner." Da, da, da. All the mob guys, some of them, there was a few who kind of gave me sideways glances and looks. I spoke to the boss's brother for 20 minutes and I told him a funny story about Tony Jack. And he said, "Yeah, that sounds like my uncle." And he's like, "What was he paying you?" I'm like 3% per collection. He's like, "Oh my goodness, I would have paid you. I'd pay you a lot more than that. Wish you were still working." But nobody cared. And anybody who has a problem with me, can, like I said, I'm not hard to find. You know what I'm saying? Come find me. I will laugh in the face of anybody who says anything about that. You're gonna tell me I can't promote my books or merch, whether listen, do something. They ain't gonna do because I'm the gangster. You know what I'm saying? Them guys are just white collar racketeers. They know I'm the gangster. They remember me. A lot of them remember me. They remember my reputation. They knew how I was cut. Ain't nobody saying nothing to me, bro. I'm there promoting my stuff. They're all coming by like, "Hey, Lonzo, good to see you. I got a good job. Well done. Let me buy your book." You know what I'm saying? They ain't saying nothing. They're just happy that I got out of prison and I'm doing good. And they
So,
don't.
How did the Tokos right now, the family that he's saying he was part of, are they like kind of upset at him for keep
Yes,
bringing?
and there's another thing. He goes on. He came on your show, and he says at that festival a couple years back that one of the Tokos came up to him and told him that they were proud of him and they supported what he did. I can say unequivocally that is, I don't know who said that to him, but I can tell you that sentiment is false to a galactic degree. The Tokos and the Jackalonis are very, very upset with Gunner's behavior and him co-opting their name for his brand and telling stories that they believe are totally false. Um, and he's doing it he's doing it without their permission. And it's upsetting a lot of people, and I get a lot of the blowback. He said on your show that all these mob guys stopped by his tent. I know Vinny Jack stopped by his tent because I was there when Vinny Jack stopped by his tent. I But Vinny Jack ain't Jackie. Just because they're brothers, that don't mean that that the boss is somehow co-signing you. And just because Vinny Jackaloni and his wife wanted to stop by and take a look and maybe grab a t-shirt, by no means does that mean they're co-signing you or endorsing you. The fact that Gunner somehow believes that he has some support from these people, again, it's detached from the reality that I exist in.
all right. So these mobbed up guys, because you're saying if somebody got a problem, come holler at me.
Yeah, holler me.
That's what you're saying. And then you saying that these guys are soft because they white collar cats. That don't make you a little bit
No, they are. I don't care.
the
What are they gonna
mobbed
do,
up
man?
the mobbed up Toco cats out of
Listen,
Detroit.
there's a handful of the guys that I would respect that who are still in the game, and but most of them, yeah, they're white collar guys, and God bless them. That's what they should be. You don't want to be a gangster. You don't want to be in the streets with a gun. You don't want to be going to prison. You don't want to do the white collar stuff. That's what they do. That's what they were raised to do. Their fathers introduced into this, so you don't have to do gangster stuff. They're not. It's not like the movies. It's not like the mob groupies on MobTube. These guys don't want to be known. They don't want to be known as gangsters. They don't want to be known as mafia. They're not telling anyone they're in the mafia. They're not fronting it out there. Look at me, I'm in the mafia. You know, the only people who know are the people around them, like directly involved with the rackets they're involved in. Outside of that, they're upstanding citizens. They're raising their kids. They're putting their kids through college. They own businesses. They're not gangsters, and they shouldn't be. That's just dumb. If you're in the mob, if you're projecting I'm in the mob, you're a moron. That's what New York mob guys do. They're like, look at me, I'm in the mob. Then they all end up dead or in prison. I'm not worried about these guys. I respect the guys who do, and to a degree, like if the old codes and whatever. I respect whatever, but I don't respect the criminal. I don't respect the gangster. I don't respect a scumbag doing criminals. If you're working the rackets like municipal contracts to make money, I respect that. But if you're like doing identity fraud to scam old ladies out of their retirement money, which some guys do, what I'm saying? I don't respect that. You're a scumbag, what I'm saying? And ain't nobody got a problem with me, bro. That's the falsity that the whole Bernstein got scared by the fake mob guy. Like nobody cares, bro. I'm easy to find. I'm at the Italian festival. I go out. They all pretend he's not going to show up. I'm like, what are you talking about, bro? I'm everywhere. I mean, I'm easy to find. I've been doxxed. You know what I'm saying? And come see me. Ain't nobody coming to see me. Remember, who's going to see me? What they going to do to me? I'm the guy who used to grab a guy by the throat and smash his face in, right? You really want to come see that guy because you don't like what he's talking about? No, because I did 13 years in prison, man. I wasn't a cakewalk, you know what I'm saying? I'm not some punk like wannabe or something like you see on Facebook and YouTube. I mean, I'm the real deal, and I proved it.
For the 13 years, what were the charges?
Extortion, bank robbery, armed robbery, kidnapping, on and on and on. I think kidnapping got dropped, but yeah, I had 17 total charges at first, pled out to like 2 armed robberies, 2 armed robberies, extortion, and bank robbery.
Did somebody testify against you in court?
No, I didn't go to court.
You took a deal.
Yeah.
Okay, but your lawyer had discovery.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and so somebody was set to testify.
Didn't even get that far, bro. I wasn't gonna try because I was going to lose. They had me 17 charges, bro. They caught me cold-handed. I just robbed the bank.
They caught you after you robbed a bank.
Yeah, with a gun and a bag of money from the bank.
Now, was Gunner a tough guy? Was Gunner a real hardcore criminal? In the world of St. Clair Shores, teenagers and people in their in their early 20s, back in the 90s, was he someone that evoked fear? Yeah, he did. I mean, he was a cowboy running around the streets of St. Clair Shores and doing crazy things like home invasions and bank robberies and assaults. And I mean, that's all true. And he did 14 years in prison and kept his mouth shut. Again, that's all true. I have no problem for that.
So I got in a high-speed chase. I crashed, got out, ran, boom, threw the gun. They all surround me. You know what I'm saying? Beat my ass. Game over. What am I gonna do? Fight that? You can't fight.
When you robbed this bank, what happened when you went in there?
I put a note. This is how slick I was. I made a fake bomb. Walked in wearing a shirt and tie, so I look upstanding. Walked to the back counter, wrote on the note. Basically, I said I need $75,000. There's a bomb in the bank. I need $75,000 in the next 90 seconds, or the bank goes boom. It's remotely detonated. Then I set this box down. It's got some wires sticking out. I leave it on the counter. I walk out, jump in my car, drive to the drive-through, do the pneumatic note thing. She reads it. She looks up. She reads it. Looks up, and I'm like this. And they send me a bunch of money out. Zoop! I grab it, throw it in the car. Think I'm good. I think they had a tracking device in the money. I never found out for sure, but I think they had to have, because they got on me quick, man. I got about 5 miles and I'm on the expressway, and I look and there's an unmarked car on the side of the road, and I'm like, oh no, that's not good. And as soon as I passed him, it jumped out behind me, and I'm like, crap. And I was in a stolen car, and it gets behind me, so I start speeding up, and I look, there's another one, that cop on the side of the road, and it gets behind me, so I get in a big high-speed chase, bro. I got like 10 cops chasing me, and anyways, ended up crashing and burning, bro. Like,
So when they arrested you for that, you didn't get out after that. You was
no,
in county jail.
my
And
bond was $6 million for all the charges. Yeah, for
six
all
million.
5.75 is what it was, but whatever, round it up.
So from that arrest, you did 13 years from that. You didn't see outside after that arrest for 13 years.
13.3, yeah, 13.3 years.
Okay.
That
And
was
what
it.
what prison did you do most of your time at?
8 different prisons over 13.3. They
Yeah.
bounce you around, bro.
Yeah.
There's some harder than others.
State prison.
State prison, yeah, which is harder than Fed prison.
Yeah.
It's way harder. But yeah, man, I just did, and I was fine in prison. Like I didn't trip. God had my back. Like I told you, man, I had this moment with God, and then I was a big muscle bound guy and a tough guy, known for smashing fools, and my reputation did follow me into the joints, bro. Like when I get off the bus and carry my bedroll and I'm walking up to my new unit, whatever, there was always a guy or two who knew me from the streets, and everybody knew me as a lunatic, bro. Like this freaking dude's a lunatic, bro. And not just with these, like knocking mother effers out left and right, it was crazy gangster stuff, and the mob connection. So they would tell all the heads, the old heads, the heads of the gangs and stuff. This dude who just rode in, his name's Al. He's a bad mother effer, man. Might want to make sure your guys leave him alone. And they did. So they'd come to me the next day. I'd hit the yard, and they'd be like, "Hey, what's up, Al? Good to see you. Da, da. I remember the time you did this. Da, da, da. Listen, I want you to meet my friend so and so. So he's the head of the Vice Lords. He's the head of this gang. He's the head of that gang." And they'd shake my hand and say, "What's up, man? Nice to meet you. Whatever." And then they would ignore me. I would ignore them. I just do my bit. Did my time, and it'd work out. If I ever had, I was friends with like the Black Nation Islam dudes. The heads of them, like the two head guys, were my boys, because both of them are writing books, and I helped them write their books. And I took a lot of time and energy to help them write their books. And so if I ever had an issue, I go right to them. And I did have an issue once. A little punk stole $70 off my pin on my phone. And I said, I want to smash him. Alan Bay. He said, "You sure he did it?" I said, "Yeah, bro." He asked me, he had an emergency. He said, "You got to call home when it's an emergency." So I gave him my pin to call. No big deal. I was trying to be a good guy. Next day I checked my phone, $70 is missing. So he says, "Get him." So during count, I went up in his cell and I smashed this dude, mollywopped him, and he didn't tell. He didn't tell because he knew if he told, he'd be even worse off because his own gang was going to get him. If he ratted, the Nation guys. He knew the Nation guys had to give me the green light for me to go smash him. So he's like, if I tell him, I'm really screwed. So he said he fell on the stairs. But anyways,
You said the Nation guys. What nation we talk about?
Nation Islam.
Oh, Nation of Islam. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got sent. The Nation of Islam sent you.
They didn't send me. They just green light me to smash the kid. He was one of theirs. He was one of theirs, and he stole $70 off my pin. So I went to the head dude, Alan Bay, who's my dog. Like I'm the only white dude who eats with these guys. And then when they do cook-ups, they bring me a bowl. Like that's how tight with knocking the door for you. So I said, Alan Bay is the guy's name. I said, this kid, stole much money. I said, I want to hurt him. He says, man, I said, listen, he said, you sure he did it? I said, yeah, I'm 100%. And I told him what happened. He said, all right, man, green light, get him. So that very same day, I ran up in his cell and mollywopped his ass.
Have any of those made Toko family members reached out to you and said to you, stop talking about?
Never. They never would. They're never going to do that. There's only a few handful left, and a few. I still talk to some of my cousins who are like involved. And one of them at the Italian festival sat me down and was like, "Bro, listen, man, you were a maniac back in the day. You and your Uncle Pete." He's like, "But it's good to see you're home and out and doing really good." And then he says to me, he's like, "Listen, I want you to meet my daughter. She's named after your mother." And I'm like, "Really? That's cool." He calls her over, "Gracie, come here." And he's like, "I want you to meet your cousin Alan, da da da." And anyways, nobody cares. Nobody ever cared. Why would they, man? I'm not bad mouthing anybody. I'm just telling stories that, from my past that are they're not even that remarkable.
Because some people do have like, and I think related to some of the stuff that you're saying, you talk about that genealogy and the timeline and everything like that. It's people out there that have printed these type of genealogy to show that you wasn't.
They're listen, I'm telling you, I posted mine. They are fake, bro. These lunatics, like mentally ill kids, will make a fake genealogy, and maybe I've heard that they've made like fake like rap sheets with me as a pedophile and these are lunatics. They just make crap. It's very simple. My grandfather was Peter Paul Tocco. His cousin, second cousin, was Giacomo Tocco. Their fathers grew up together in the old country. Those fathers moved to Detroit, the same neighborhood, to be by each other. All of the Tocos did. There was only two like factions. I call them factions. One lived in Clinton Township, right, which is, believe it or not, was my grandfather's first cousins, which I didn't know them because they lived in Clinton Township, and one lived in Grosse Pointe. Those are the ones that I knew because I grew up with them. I went to church with them. I went to family functions with them. Did weddings with them. I did, everything with them. So I just knew them as cousins and uncles and aunts. That's it. The ones in Clinton Township, I knew they were my cousins. Obviously, they're named Tocco, but I wasn't friends with them. I didn't know any of them. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't know them. They lived in another city. So that was it. They're all the same family. It's a bunch of haters that are clowns.
So you tell the story about having to go identify a dead body. So you had to go to a black neighborhood. Somebody sent you over to identify a body, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was a body that you had to identify. Who sent you to identify the body?
An uncle.
An uncle.
Yeah, he's dead. A dead uncle.
Okay. And was this
he was connected to some bikers.
He was connected to, but he wasn't a made guy, you're saying?
No.
Okay. So Nas, you know the rapper Nas.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Nas.
Huh?
I love Nas.
Yeah.
I am. It's
Not,
true.
Oh, okay. I see you. Yeah. And Nas is famous for, he's an incredible lyricist, right? Legend, right?
Yeah.
But most of his stuff, he talks about a lot of different things, but some of the times he talks about the streets, right? And some of the stuff that he talks about from the streets are things that he saw but he didn't do. Is that more like what the Alan Gunner Lindbloom story is?
No, I'm telling you. The only thing I'm going to tell you is what I did or saw, bro. I have no. The Alan Gunner Lindbloom story is not that remarkable. What story have I told you that you think is unbelievable? It's nothing that crazy. It's a dead, but you think it's crazy that I identified a dead body? I mean, it's just,
no. It's like
what? There's nothing there remarkable. It's not that crazy. There's nothing.
No, because I'm just saying I've seen all these in the other interviews that I have seen, and then I'll probably end up grabbing clips or something like that. But the other interviews I've seen, you really put forward like you was with the mob.
Well, what I just tell you, bro? I grew up surrounded by the mob. I had guys like Tony Jack and other uncles and cousins put me to work doing things. That was it. And I was never claimed to be in the mob or with the mob or part of a crew, but that's the things that I did.
You wasn't a made guy, but you did represent that Tocco family in Grosse Pointe.
I didn't represent anybody but me. But if somebody from the family said, "Hey, you want to make a buck?" I say, "Yeah, put me in the game. I'll do whatever."
Gunner, you didn't say that the Tocco family in Grosse Pointe, you was related to them?
I am related to them very clearly. I've published my genealogy. Yes, I am related.
Okay, so
They're all cousins.
So you're related to the Toccos, the same Toccos, the partnership, right? And you end up doing security work. Jackaloni hooks you up with the security work. This is mob connected.
Yeah.
You out there collecting for people. That's mob connected. So you're doing mob business. You represent yourself as doing mob business.
But I never claimed I was in the mob or not. I didn't care. I also did business for worked with the black dudes. I worked with my other drug dealer homeboys from Roseville. I worked for whoever about the money. The mob dudes didn't impress me. I'm going to tell you why. They're all old uncles. This is your Uncle Joe, Uncle Tony, Uncle Jack, whatever. Bunch of fat, sloppy old dudes who couldn't whoop my ass. So I didn't even pay them no attention. Like, I didn't care less. I was introduced to this uncle, Uncle Joe Tocco, when I was 5 years old. Here's your Uncle Joe. Hi, Uncle Joe. He's a big fat guy, smokes a cigar, and got to pick your ring and drives a Cadillac. All right. Okay. So, and this uncle looks like this, and this guy. None of them. I was never impressed with them.
Wait
You
a
know what I'm
minute,
saying?
though, Gunner. You can't. And listen, I'm a nice guy, but I'm a journalist, and the people that follow my channel, they expect me to ask certain questions. You're not Alan Gunner Lindbloom from the internet. You're not this guy that people are talking about if your story isn't connected to the mob. If you say I'm
Yeah,
throwing
yeah, yeah, yeah.
if you say I'm
That's
throwing
true.
if you say I'm throwing the mob all the way out, I'm not saying I'm
No,
mob if it
that's
ain't
not
got
what
nothing
I'm
to do.
saying. I never said that. I made it very clear all along. I told you
But if you
where
say if you say I'm not with the mob,
I'm not. I was never with the mob. I grew up around it. I was involved in it, but I'm not with the
yeah,
mob.
how does yours right? Then how does a story like yours gain traction from just being outside punching up people and
Well, you're
um,
right. What do you want
extorting
me?
people?
Like, yes, it was because of my mob association and some of the gangster stuff that I did. Yes. So what? I mean, so it gained traction for that. That's all.
So
And
the
I
guy
promoted the
that
book.
the guy that you had to the guy that
I
you had
was
to
I
identify
was
that was
trying to
dead.
promote a novel. That's it. But anyways, the
The
guy
guy that
what?
the guy that you had to identify, the guy that was killed, that you had to go in the backyard and identify the guy. You know what he was killed for?
Yeah, talking too much.
So he was talking about the family too much,
Yeah,
is what you said.
yeah.
Now,
But he
to
was
you,
talking business about people who are alive.
you don't worry. Because the
No,
way I see it, I don't
I look
know.
worried, bro.
I've never been in the mob before, right? But
Me neither.
everything, everything I ever saw was like,
Yeah.
if you talk,
Here's the thing. Everything you ever saw, 90% of it is BS, bro. It's not real. It's Hollywood bullcrap. So what you're thinking you saw is fake. It's not real. And also, I'm talking about dudes who are dead, long dead. And so, and like again, I was never in the mob, but I don't, I
I
don't
mean,
talk
because
about that.
every city's got some made guys. A lot of cities got made guys. I know
Sure.
some made guys, right? I used to kick it with a couple of them. I won't obviously say their name. I never said nothing about one guy. He taught me how to play chess. That's the only thing I could say, right? But so if I was going around talking this and that, I feel like somebody would come pay me a visit.
Well, I don't feel like that at all. Come pay me. That's the difference between me and you, bro. But your boy's alive. I might bring up stories from dead people. I never mention guys who are alive, or if I do, I change their names. I've had guys call me and say, "Bro, I forgot all about that story till I heard you say it on YouTube." I'm like, it's funny, it's a crazy story. I changed the name. It is what it is. Do I
So
look? Do I get scared, bro?
we are saying definitively today, we're saying that Alan Gunner Lindbloom was never associated with the mob.
That's not true at all. What you didn't hear about everything I said?
Oh yeah, because it sounds like you saying on some interviews saying I'm with the mob, I'm in the
Well,
mob. My grandfather was
well,
in the mob, and now you saying you
okay.
wasn't
Oh,
in the
listen,
mob.
bro. Listen. You're wasting a lot of time that doesn't matter. I could be telling you some good stories very clearly. My grandfather was never in the mob. Never said. I never said once. It is. I was never in the mob. Never said I was. Never said I was with the mob. I was around it. I worked for some mob guys. I was associated with it. There's your story. That's the end of that.
So
Now there
you
are
mean
some.
to tell me, Alan Gunner, you mean to tell me if I go on YouTube, I'm not gonna find you saying that your grandfather
No,
is in the mob. I'm not gonna
no,
find that.
not gonna find it.
Okay.
100%. So not that might be some YouTube trolls like saying I said it, but you're not gonna find it. I don't put it past them.
You didn't say that in the Vlad interview?
No, no, I never said that. No.
So what's
I might have said my grandfather was involved in sports betting, maybe because that's what I was told. But when they moved to St. Clair Shores, he retired. He got out of it. That's what I was told. That's as far as ago. But these were his cousins. He was around them. They did dinner. They played bocce. They hung out. They did things together. They were family. Not everything the mob guys do is mob related. They were, most of the time they weren't doing mob stuff. They were just doing family stuff. You got to remember these people grew up. My grandfather grew up with the boss for 65 years. They went to school together. Their kids went to school together. They lived a couple blocks apart. Their fathers grew up together too in the old country. But that don't make me in the mob. I never said I was.
okay? So what impression are people to get? Let's go back to the story where you talk about the tunnels being under your grandparents' house. What's the impression people are to get when you say in an interview?
Listen.
Let me finish the question though, Gunner. What are people to think when you say it was a tunnel under my grandparents' house that they used to smuggle booze during Prohibition? Like, don't you think that when you talk about Toco, Grosse Point, all the stuff you did, when you say Prohibition, it was tunnels under there, you talk about that family in that house is mob related, and you related to that family that's in that house because you went there and with your grandparents.
Yeah, that's not rocket science.
Right. Those are your grandparents, and you're bolstering the fact that that's a mob family.
I'm simply telling you a fact. Like I said, bro, you're wasting a lot of time because I could be sharing with you some good stuff, and you're dwelling on goofy troll shit that makes no difference, and I don't care. Like I'm not gonna get into it anymore. I don't debate my life. I don't have nothing to prove. I'm not gonna debate you on my life or anybody else. That's a waste.
Gunner,
wasting your time, bro.
I can't debate you because I don't know the facts.
These things are unimportant. What I'm saying is you have a small handful of trolls that are literally dorks, mentally ill mob groupie dorks who are trash talking. Everybody who's somebody gets those.
Meanwhile,
this is not coming from a bunch of mob dweebs or mob dorks, as he likes to call them, in their basement. This particular iteration of people attacking Gunner's credibility is coming from the Tocos and the Jackalonis.
And you're wasting your time asking about it. I'm not defending my life with you, bro.
Okay,
like I told you the story. That's it. I already told you.
No, two things. So when I DM'd you, you said you answer anything, which you have been gracious enough to do thus far. Number two, if you're attacking the credibility of trolls who say that your stories don't add up, when you talk about Scott Burnstein, you're talking about a respected mob historian. I don't
respect him.
I haven't seen.
He said he didn't know me, and then I posted my phone records that showed he called me 156 times in 12 months.
I gotta see Scott saying he don't know you. I never saw any in all my research. I never found anybody online that says Scott was full of shit about anything.
I have a lot of people, lots of people. A lot of people hate him for what he did. They all knew he was my boy. They all knew we were friends for years. We'd appeared together on TV all the time. And he says, "Well, I barely know Mr. Lindbloom. He's a clown, bro."
Are you saying Scott Burnstein's not a credible mob historian?
No. All he does is regurgitate. Here's what he does. He regurgitates anything that he can find as far as court records and court documents and police reports. That's all he's got. He has no inside sources, no credibility. He don't know nothing. I asked him, who do you know from my time, my era, whatever. He didn't name one person. And I thought to myself, I could name 10 right now. He don't know dick. He's not credible. He's a clown. And a lot of people hate him. Like I get people messaging me, I hate Bernstein. He gets everything. Listen, when I was at the Italian festival, this is what I said to the boss's brother. Listen closely. I said, do you have a problem with me in my book? It's a fiction novel. He says, not at all. He's like, but I can't stand that Scott Burnstein. I said, I smile. I said, why not? Because everything he puts in his books is wrong. It's all BS. I said, well, listen, if you want to confront him about it, he's right there. Scott is standing in my booth. Scott had been in my booth all day, hanging out, chilling, wearing some art thing. And I said to this boss brother, if you want to ask him about it, he's right there. And he laughs. No, it's not that serious. Basically, he said he gets all this shit wrong in his stuff. And I've heard tons of people say that. All he knows is what he can find on paperwork. That's it. But the stories I just shared with you about Tony or anything I did, there's no paperwork on it. There's nobody ratted and testified against me. I didn't rat and testify against anybody. These are firsthand accounts that I'm telling you. And that is that. You can believe them or you don't have to. The nerds don't want to believe it. It doesn't bother me if they don't.
So is Scott Burnstein lying when he says that the Toco family, you saying they all related, but we know which one we're talking about right now, that they discredit your whole story? Is he lying about that?
They never discredited it. Nobody said nothing. Why didn't I?
This is what Scott Burnstein said.
Well, he can just say anything he wants, but nobody in the family said anything.
So when he says the Tocos discredit your story, Scott's lying on the Tocos.
Where did they do that? Where?
I'm just saying, I've seen Scott say this in an interview that he said they discredit your whole story.
You can say anything. I can say anything.
So let me ask you a question. Would you do an interview with Scott Burnstein?
Probably not. Here's why. I would do it. I just don't care enough. I'm busy, bro. I'm busy. I'm making money, earning a living, got a document. I don't care about him. like it would be hard for me not to slap him if I saw him, you know.
Mhm.
He'd just run to the cops and tell on me, and I go to jail. But he's a liar and a fraud. He's a proven fraud. I've proven it. You know what I'm saying? You
Okay.
don't know me, but here's 156 phone calls for 30 hours of talk time. You know what I'm saying? Here's dozens of pictures of us together. You know what I mean? But he don't know me. All he knows, I've learned from him when I was friends with him, that he doesn't know anything except what he gets from paperwork. That's it. He's just a regurgitator. So he doesn't know dick about. So if he says, bro, Gunner isn't directly related to Jack Tocco and that line of blood, he's right. If I am not directly first cousins to Jack Tocco in that line of blood, second cousins I am, third cousins I am. And what's the difference? I grew up with them and around them. It's all the same thing. When you're Italian, you might not get it. But when you're Italian and these guys walk in, your mom says, "This is your uncle." You go, "Okay, uncle. This is your cousin. This is cousin." You don't do a genealogy on the guy, on your cousins and stuff. You just, okay, he's an uncle. And that's it. And Scott knew that, and I tried to tell him that for years. I did tell him that over the years. And he goes, I know, you guys are all cousins, you're all uncles. I get it. But then, and so all of a sudden he just flipped the script, and so he's a clown. Like I said, I mean,
So, okay, you're not a May guy. You admitted that. What about the jobs you did? You do jobs for the mob at the direction of the mob?
yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're not hearing
Oh, I'm
or
hearing you
what.
very loud and clear. I'm just
I told you what Tony said. Go get that money. I told you about. He said, "Go beat that guy's ass." I told you I could go on. I could give you story after story after story about collections. Yeah.
He's come on my show and said that Giacalone, he did some things for him, that he lived across the street,
Yeah.
that he actually did some work for the Tocos. Is that all fabricated?
It's nothing that I've ever found in my research or my reporting. It's nothing I would ever put my name to. I have issues with some of the protocol and some of the time frames. I know that the Wikipedia page that I recently saw claims that Peter Tocco or Peter Paul Tocco put Gunner, quote unquote, on record with Tony Giacalone. I mean, I can tell you that right now is not true. I mean, that never happened.
So that's a false statement made on that Wikipedia.
Well, if you're asking me, it is.
Well, you're a mob historian that knows these families very well.
I'm just making sure I nail it down, right?
Yeah.
Because
Well, I mean, I told you 3 times now. And I'm saying, yeah, I gave you direct stories, word of mouth, right to you. That yes, he said, "Go do this. Can you do that? Will you do that?" Yeah, and I did all this stuff.
Gunner, you got to forgive me because I watched different interviews where you said different things about one subject. So I have to ask
Yeah,
you.
I get it, but not much different. Like, trust me, because I always say the same thing. And maybe the details might be a little off, or I might have changed something like a name or something, but they're all the same. I got nothing to hide. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. And so what are you doing for money now?
I'm a writer.
Right. I mean, you get money, you sustain your lifestyle
Yeah.
from
As a
selling
writer and a
books.
publisher.
Okay. How many books have you sold?
Thousands. I don't know the exact number, but
Okay. All right.
thousands.
'Cause I mean,
But
'cause-
I make more money now publishing. I'm not going to tell you how much I make publishing, but it's good. And I'm not going to tell you about the ghostwriting, which is good. But my books, I've only published 2 novels, and they did well. But my next 2 novels are going to do really well because I know how to market them now, and I also cater to a better market. The mob audience is small. It's a very finite audience. You know what I mean? And you could break into it mainstream if you have enough marketing. But the book I'm about to publish, a political thriller, and then another book about two cocaine smugglers, and those books will blow up. And in the meantime, I make a living publishing and ghostwriting.
okay. All right. Because you said well, the mob fan base,
Yeah,
right?
it's small.
Yeah, you mentioned the mob fan base. So when you say the mob fan base, again, you connecting that fan base back to you. You're not with the mob.
I'm telling you, I wrote a book about a mafia family.
So you wrote a book about a mafia family. Okay.
So I've experienced the mob market, not big, and I've studied it, and I work in it, and I get paid to work in the market, the book market, publishing industry. And the mafia is a very small niche market. I wouldn't recommend anyone trying to get into it because you're not going to sell that many books. There's a finite small amount of people who like true crime stuff, mob stuff, but it's small. It's small. You might sell a couple thousand books if you at best, probably a couple hundred. And then there's my books are fiction, so I think compared to The Godfather all the time. People are like, "Dude, you wrote the next Godfather," which means I could break into mainstream very easily. But if I had $100,000 laying around to market my book, then my book would be a household name. But both books are optioned for films right now, so let's hope they get made into films.
So, okay, one more question. Can you tell me about Pete the Greek?
Couple Pete the Greeks. Which one?
You know these guys better than me.
I really don't want to get in Pete the Greek because one, I don't know if they're alive anymore. But the Pete the Greek I liked. Yeah. There's two of them.
I'm gonna have to go back and look and find out why I put that question on there, because there's a reason why Pete the Greek's name. I'll be moving, so sometimes I'll be writing these questions on the phone.
I don't know if those guys. I knew two Pete the Greeks. I don't know. The one's probably dead because he'd be old. The other one might still be alive because he wasn't that older than me. He's probably 10 years older than me.
So was there a story that you told about Pete the Greek? Is that why this is?
There might have been. I don't know. I mean, I might have told a story about Pete the Greek. I'm trying to think. The one managed a health club where I ended up taking over management, and I skimmed the place really bad. Like I fleeced it, whatever. And he set me all up for that. So I don't know if that's the story.
Both of these Pete the Greeks that you knew were they was made guys?
No, they're Greek. They can't be made. They were just mafia associates. There's a lot of those. There was a lot of
associates. Very, very close. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just like me. I just guys who may be involved with mob guys doing some work for them, but they're both bookies. One of them worked down in Greektown, and the other one was out in the suburbs near me, and they had mob guys they were friends with and did work with, and I imagine they probably sold drugs and did lots of things.
So that's sort of like the Casino, De Niro, right? He wasn't made, but he was really, really close in Casino, right?
He was, yeah.
He was really, but he couldn't have been made because he wasn't Italian. Is that right?
I don't know if he was. I don't know if he was. I think he was Jewish, but
that's what I'm thinking. That he could never get made because he was Jewish, but he was real.
I mean, I had a bit of a like. I didn't care about getting made or anything like that. I didn't, because I was half Sicilian, and my uncle said, "Oh, you're only half Sicilian on mom's side, so you can't get made." And I'm like, that kind of put a chip on my shoulder, and I was like, I don't care to get made. Like none of these mother effers could whoop my ass. That's literally how I saw it. These mother effers can't whoop my ass. I've had them say, well, you can't whoop everyone with these. Somebody comes with one of these, and I pulled my gun out. Like, I said, I got one of these too, and I'm a good freaking shot. They better be a good shot.
But these guys know how to do like slick shit, right? They know how to they get you with a chick, they get you drunk, they catch you stumbling out the bar.
Like I said, you wasted a lot of time on the hater stuff. I could have gave you some stories, but I've been like, I had to lead people to the slaughter too before. Never killed anyone, but one time there was almost a murder. Got unbelievable how that got out of that. Guy got lucky, and another time guy was beating up his wife, and so her father told me, who I was friends with the guy. He was a mob guy. He said, I want you to bring him to this bar and then bring him out in the alley, and then we're gonna get him. And I had warned the guy like 3 freaking times, like, bro, you got to stop slapping up your wife. And he's like, oh, she gets drunk and she does it. And anyways, I'll take him. I said, come on, let's go smoke a joint in the alley. And I go outside, and the brother and the father jump him, and I got him in a headlock. I got him in a chokehold, right? And the brother smashes him with a bottle and stabs him in the throat. Ends up cutting me because I got the guy by the throat. Boom. He didn't die or nothing, but yeah, but I mean, most of those guys that I was around, like, bro, I went down there one time to the market, and I had a cousin named Dominic, and they're all standing around playing cards and dice and whatever, and they're all on the dock smoking cigarettes, and they're just chilling. There's about 10 of them, right? And Dominic comes running up, he pulls up, and he jumps out of the car. He says, Al, this guy's coming down here, says he's going to whip my ass. Who is he? This dude from Roseville. Some steroided out dude from Roseville over a girl. He said, get my back. I said, yeah, he ain't going to touch you. So the guys pull up, carload of dudes jump out, 4 of them. This big guy comes walking, like storming toward Dominic. And he's basically threatening him. And I said, I got in front of him. I said, bro, no, this ain't happening. He says, who are you? I said, I'm the guy stopping you from getting to him. He's down, mother effer something to me. And I'm wham, just jaw shot. Boom, knock him out. So he's down. And then I pull a gun. I said, anybody want to die today? I said, get your boy and get him out of here. So they peel him up and they take off. Now, all these 10 mob guys, like, the groupies, the mob groupies of the Hollywood, they don't know dick about the mob. They're like, they're mob guys. I could give you their last names, and they all have famous mafia last names. Like, nobody calls it the partnership. That's what the FBI called it in 1930. It was called either the syndicate or the family. All these guys are family related. They're all in tracksuits and gold chains in front like they're gangsters, right? I just knocked this freaking guy out and pulled a gun and told him peel him up and go. All these guys see me. They see me in the club stomp a guy one time and put a gun in his mouth. 100 people in the club. The guy had pulled a gun on me during a drug deal. So I caught him, had a girl he liked, bring him to this club, and I ran up on him out of the kitchen and smashed him and then put a gun in his mouth in front of like 100 people. I said, motherfucker, you want to play gangster, bro? You got the wrong guy. So all these cousins and friends and stuff, they see me doing this stuff. So I'm the guy that they like, that's a gangster right there. These mob guys weren't doing dick. I could have ran through their whole crew. I could have slapped every one of them. They wouldn't have done nothing. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean,
Listen, you did 13 years. So you obviously did something, right? Obviously. You was getting it in, because somebody felt the need to put you away for a long time. Right? You didn't do nothing freaky. It wasn't a rape. You didn't mess with no little kids. You was in the streets. You did some shit. You robbed the fucking bank, right? And we know that you robbed the fucking bank. Some other shit, some extortion and stuff like. So we do know that. But you say I'm wasting my time because I'm asking you about these. You could have been telling me others. The reason why I didn't ask you about certain of those, because I seen you tell those stories other places, and then it might get redundant. And I wanted to talk to you about that mob lifestyle, right? Because my man's put me on to you. He said, yo, go talk to my man Gunner. And so he put me on to you. And that's what I wanted, because I talked to him about, he faked his own death, across the East Coast, LSD, weed, all that stuff. He did time for it, right? I interviewed him. And then he said, yo, you need to talk to my guy. So, of course, when I get into it, I start digging. I start seeing these conflicting, this guy saying this guy saying that. That's why I'm talking about this.
Like I say, and that's a waste of time because
but you knew Gunner in the DM. I said, and you right?
No. I'm just saying, but you were wasted a lot of time on it, which is you kept asking me. So you're not saying you were in the mob. I told you the exact story, the exact scenario. Again, I grew up surrounded by these people who are my cousins and uncles, whether it's through second or third cousins. I did some work for them when I got older. Was basically just a professional criminal. If they called, I was there, and that was that. Now these dorks online, they want to try and discredit it. I don't care, bro. Dude, listen, I'm way too busy for that, bro. I'm getting money. I'm building an empire. I don't have time to argue my life with you or some nerds online. I mean, they can believe whatever you want. You can believe. I don't care if they believe. That's the thing. I genuinely don't care. Like I could do a million of these interviews, bro. Like I get people messing me up. I've been asked to do it with Scott. I don't care, man. I've already wasted an hour. Not saying I'm a waste, you're a waste, but normally I'm sitting here working, man, getting money, bro. Like, what some nerds, here's the thing. The nerds who call into question my life, if I saw them in real life, they would tremble and probably crap their pants. And because I'm the guy who could, if I chose to, grab them by the throat and pound their face in hamburger, and nothing they could do, nothing. They could try to fight, wouldn't matter. I could do that to Scott, all of these guys, if I wanted. And I'm the guy who did that. I've proven it. There's tons of stories. But I'm not that guy no more, is what I'm saying. So now I don't care. You think what you want, man. I'm better thing. I got a documentary coming out. I got a TV series I'm working on. I got both of my books are options for feature films. I'm gonna do it big. Let the haters, chirp. Everybody gets haters, bro. Everybody who's doing anything is gonna have those obsessed, weirdo, like lifeless haters. Everybody. I don't care who it is. If you got a little, salt in the game, you're gonna get them. I feel like at this point, I'm honored. I'm honored you care enough to spend your whole life trying to diagnose everything I've ever said, going through hours and hours of interviews and trying to piece together, creating fake reels and fake documents and like it just, that's mental illness, bro. Like get a life. That's all I have to say to them.
You know, I'm gonna have to go holler at Scott because Scott is doing a lot of work online. So, um, you know, as a journalist, is my and again, I probably didn't go as deep as I could have in terms of research. I did some. I see Scott seems like he's been doing a lot. Now I'm gonna have to research Scott and see what's really going on with him and see how credible this guy is. Because
Yeah, but here's the thing, bro. Don't start start a beef with him. Gunner said this or that or whatever. I mean, that ain't the game I'm playing here, bro. I'm here to just promote my books and my documentary, whatever. I don't want to start some online beef with him. Well, Gunner said you're a liar. He knows he's a liar. When Gunner said this, he knows what he did. He knows what he did. You know what I'm saying? And I don't care.
y'all already got online beef.
No, no, I don't say nothing
Maybe
about
I
it.
don't, maybe you don't do too much online talking to him, but what is it's like they got like 20 videos about you. The what Mob Chronicles?
That's one dork who's obsessed with me. Yeah, the guy beat up when I was 19.
He might be a dork. I don't because I think I saw the guy. I don't know. I can't.
He is a dork,
Yeah, let me.
bro. What do you mean? Anybody who spends their life doing that is a freaking dork. I beat him up. It's a long story. You know, he wanted to be my friend after I got out of prison, and then he started doing this. He's mentally ill. He told me he's mentally ill. He said flat out. He's like, I said, what do you do for work? It's like, I don't work. I have a disability. I'm like, what is it? He's, oh, it's a mental thing. I'm like, well, clearly you're obsessed with me. Now he's obsessed. You know, these people are freaking retarded.
You interviewed on his show on Mob Chronicles before?
No, I've never even watched one of those videos, bro.
Okay, all right.
I've never. I wouldn't waste my time, bro. That's goofy. That's goofy spaz stuff, bro. Like I wouldn't waste my time. I wouldn't waste my time with Scott or any of these people, bro. Here's the thing. I don't want a beef with Scott. I could call the guy right now. I mean, but I said I just that makes me look petty and stupid and lowbrow. You know what I'm saying? That's why I prefer you don't do that. Say don't go to him and say Gunner said this about you that. Yeah, I told you what I thought of him. He'll all he can ever say is what he said is like, well, according to my research, or the one guy that I talked to, Novi the rat, Novi didn't know him. I'm like, of course Novi didn't know him because he lived 2 cities over and he was 15 years older than me. And why would I know the guy? Other than that, but then I have to defend that, and I don't care. It's goofy, bro.
You say don't go talk to Scott about this, but this interview is gonna come out.
I don't care if he sees it, he sees it. I don't care. But don't go in there starting a beef with the dude. Like Gunner said this. What do you got to say to that? I mean, that's just
Gunner, don't put me. Listen,
cornball.
I'm a journalist. Don't put me in the position to don't go holler at so and so because it's like, listen, one guy saying one thing, one guy saying another thing. I'm not starting no beef. I'm just correcting the record as much as I possibly can. Because listen, it was brought to me. Somebody came to me and was like, "Yo, you go interview Gunner." That's what they did. I didn't even go looking for it. They was like, "Yo, go interview."
Yeah, but you could selectively edit this and make it look like I'm trashing Scott.
Oh, it's going to be edited because there's a lot of stuff going on. But nothing that you said is going to be taken out of context. I don't do that. And then if somebody says that, yo, shit's taken out of context, I'm going to release the whole raw shit. I prefer not to because it's going to be like 2 hours. People don't want to watch that. But if somebody challenged the authenticity of what's going on my video, I'm willing to drop the whole joint. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's gonna be edited, but it's not gonna misinterpret anything you say, put words here all out of context, or I mean, it is what it is. You said what you said. I mean, you stand on what you told me.
Yeah, I don't care.
So,
honestly, I probably won't even watch it. You know, no offense to you. I don't have time.
Listen, I'm gonna watch it one time just to make sure I didn't make no mistakes. After that, I probably won't watch it because I won't be watching my shit. You know what I mean? But nah. I mean, I do appreciate you taking your time out to come answer the questions. You knew it was going to be some tough questions, and respect to you for manning up and turning on the camera and still sitting down and having this conversation. I think that says a lot. You know what I mean? After that, it's just let the people decide. I think I could be wrong, but I'm going forward because you're gonna be doing more interviews. You got to do press runs because you're selling stuff. You selling movies, you selling books, you selling merch. You know what I mean? You doing your thing. Going forward, that's gonna have to be something that you say to these guys when they talk to you, like right off rip, like I ain't with them, I'm not mob, or my grandfather wasn't mob, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I never said that. So I mean, they take if they take something I said out of context, then they can make it sound like I said I was in a mound or acted like I was in a mound. No, I've never said that. They know that, so it is what it is. Again, these are just nerds who could get slapped in real life, and they know that. So I ain't gonna do. They know in real life these motherfuckers would run from their own shadow. So I'm perfectly fine with who I am, where I am. You know what I'm saying? And no one coming to get me. So, but they're welcome to try. I got a crossbow and a big knife. Yeah, yeah. You can end it like that. I got a crossbow and a big knife. Trust me, you'll be dead before you know you're dead. You get a crossbow bolt through your chest. Boom. Yeah, yeah. And I got a big knife by every window, bro.
Yo,
Big.
I'm gonna mark that down as the first time in my entire life, and I'm an older cat, that I ever heard somebody threaten somebody with a crossbow. My first time.
I mean, I'm not threatening. I'm
And
just
I grew
saying.
up I'm just saying, you say if they come for you, that's what they're gonna catch, a crossbow.
Yeah, that's what then it catch crossbow.
And I'm from the hood. You know what I mean? I've been around some things. I've seen some things. You know
Bro,
what I mean?
my crossbow, I use it for deer hunting, and it'll blow through a deer at 50 yards, blow right through it. Like the deer don't even know he's hit right through.
Yeah. Yeah.
The crossbow ain't no joke. I could shoot you through the door with it.
Me, I'm the type of guy, if somebody mentioned a crossbar, I'd probably just stop fucking with him. Me, that's just me, because I think I think this guy's crazy. Like for even mentioning this. Like, you don't want to fuck around with a guy that's talking about using a crossbow. But I'm a civilian. I don't got shit to worry about.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
a civilian. I got nothing to worry about. But if they come, anyone ever comes, which nobody ever will, of course. Why would they? I got no beef with nobody. I mean, so a couple of mob guys who don't like I told some stories of my mom, they can kiss an ass. But they ain't coming. You know that. They ain't come creeping. They ain't because they'll catch a bolt.
Right.
Yeah.
Alan Gunner Lindbloom. Again, thank you for sitting down and having this conversation with me.
You're welcome.
It might take a while for me to edit this thing and put it together, but it'll be out soon enough. But I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Don't be starting no beefs.
I don't start the beef, Gunner. I don't. How are you gonna say I'm starting the beef? You saying if I ask somebody a question, I'm starting beef?
You can ask them whatever. You're just gonna say the same old dumb shit.
Because I done had some gangsters on this show that done had real beef with each other, real life and death beef. Like I did an interview with it, and them guys had beef. Y'all got a little, but y'all ain't really got beef.
No. I
Like
don't know beef.
you a street guy. He's a mob historian. Is that really beef, or is that like a difference
Yeah.
of opinion?
Exactly what he is, a mob historian. He's not a mob journalist though. He's just a historian. He's just a guy who takes finds documents and then regurgitates them with some pictures and oftentimes embellishes or makes up some crap about the character or whatever. But you don't know any guys. He knows the one guy who ratted Nove. He's talked to him. I think he knows Paulie Corrado, who again, those guys are from the same crew who are 4 cities away from where I lived and older than me, 20 years older than me or whatever. So I didn't know anything about them. I didn't have no interaction. I might have seen them at funerals and stuff like that, weddings, but those guys wouldn't. They might remember me, but they might be like, yeah, I don't remember this freaking kid at all. But they're all like, "It's Gunner. You remember Gunner?" And nobody knew me as Gunner. My name was Al. People knew me as Al.
Okay.
But no, those older dudes, they don't remember. And the guys who are like my age or younger, they're not talking to him ever, never. They hate him. They literally hate him. They think he's just a joke. So he's not going to get any affirmations or confirmations or from those guys, the guys who are my age. And most of those guys are scared of me still to this day. They're like, just like, Al was a freaking lunatic. Well, I'm not going to get on his bad side. Would I come out and talk bad about him in public to Scott Burnstein? I look like a freaking clown. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to get in a beef with that guy. The guy's a monster. Did 13 years in prison. I don't know. He might still be a lunatic. You know what I'm saying? They don't know. But I think that most of them follow me and they kind of know, dude. I'm chill. I'm not doing nothing. They follow me. I get messages. I talk to them. I've had long conversations with guys. Not all. The guys that I remember, I knew. Guys that I was involved with. I was around. Handful, 5, 6, 7 guys who now they're all old and got kids and like, like have muscle cars and crap in their garage, and it is just regular dudes. I don't even ask them what they do for money. They might own something. I'm just like, we just talk about the old times. Remember the time. But Scott will never get a conversation out of one of those guys. Never. So all I get is a conversation out of the two dudes. That one dude was a rat. One dude was he was shelved or whatever they call it. Like he kicked out of the mob, whatever. And so that's it. This is what he got. And that's the sources he has. Besides that, he got court documents and things like that. But I'm not in those. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't involved in a RICO case or a Fed case or organized crime case, nothing like that.
I think one of his sources is the Tocco family.
The Tocco family is not talking to him. Nobody's except the Novi. He's a rat. He was deposed and he's a rat. He ratted against the boss and 12 other people in the family. That's the only Tocco he talks to. And that one dude, like I said, lived 5 cities away from me and was 20 years older than me. I had no interaction with him. He would never know me. I wouldn't know him. So if he asked, did you remember Gunner, Al, whatever, the guy's going to say no. Why would he? You know what I'm saying? He's my mother's age. You know what I'm saying? Why would I interact with somebody? And he lived 5 cities away.
Is Novi still alive?
Yeah, he's a rat running around. They know where he is. They knew where he was when he was in witness protection. He got kicked out of witness protection for coming back to seeing his family and stuff. And they knew his real name, Vito Storing. They knew his name in witness protection. They didn't kill him because they didn't want the headache. This is according to people I know. This is according to a made guy I was in prison with named Anthony Cerullo. He said they knew where Novi was. And I said, why didn't they kill him? And they said it wasn't worth the headache. It wasn't worth the heat. So they just let him go. So now he's running around Detroit still, but he's not associated with the mob at all. He could tell you stories about his crew with Tony Zarelli and those guys from that Clinton Township crew 30, 40, 50 years ago. But I don't know nothing about that. Like I said,
You know something about who was involved with Jimmy Hoffa?
Well, Jimmy Hoffa was going to meet Tony Jack the day that Hoffa disappeared. Other than that, that's all I know.
Okay, now Black Jack Tocco was the head of the Detroit partnership for like 40 years.
Yeah, that was the boss.
Okay, and it was under his command that Jimmy Hoffa got killed.
Yeah, he had to sign off on the whole thing. Did that? He was a puppet for the mob. Then here comes Jimmy Hoffa out of prison saying, "I want my spot back. I want to run the show again." And he's going on the news saying, "I'm going to rid the Teamsters of mafia influence." And whoa, Detroit was just like, whoa, wait a minute here, man. Are you serious? So that's what they did. They said, "Hey, Jimmy, slow down, man. We'll work this out. If you want to get back, we'll get you back. But let's sit down and talk about it. You can't go around saying this." And that's when Tony Giacalone, who was a guy that I worked for and I knew very closely, very, very dangerous man, probably the most dangerous person I've ever known. And I was in prison for 13 years. Here's the dude who's responsible for like 40 murders or disappearances. And Tony said, "Jimmy, meet me for dinner, figure this out." And then he went to meet Tony for dinner, and that's the last of anybody ever saw Jimmy Hoffa.
Is that, he was going to meet him. But, I heard them joke about Jimmy Hoffa, some of them old mob guys, and like joke about where he was buried and stuff. And I did hear one say he was buried under the Renaissance one time. And then come to find out, there's this dude who swears he saw Jimmy Hoffa get killed when they were building the Renaissance, and they put concrete over him. So it's a black dude. He said he saw it. So I don't know, but I don't know. That's it. That's all I know about Hoffa. I was 2 years old.
I could talk to you forever, but I'm gonna have too much to edit, and my life is already busy as fuck.
Yeah, me too, man. I gotta go.
What's poppin' is your boy Mike Powers. The intro king.